Hey guys, I'm Lee from Lee Likes Music, the place to share, explore, and learn about rock music from Bandcamp. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at Styx's newest album, which is called The Mission. So that's coming up. So Styx, for you guys who don't know this band from before, they were actually one of the big prog rock bands of the 1970s. They were also quite big in the 80s, made songs like, I think it's called Mr. Roboto. That made a very, very big impact on the American culture and just the whole culture of the world in general in terms of music. They've released some very fundamental albums, and this new album, The Mission, is their first album in 14 years that is featuring original material. This is the first one since Cyclorama, and it's been compared to albums that they previously released, such as Pieces of Eight and Grand Illusion. I really haven't listened that much to Pieces of Eight, but Grand Illusion is an amazing album. You should definitely go and check it out. So before we get into the actual album review here, I just want to talk a little bit about the background story of the album. So here it is. So the lineup of the band consists of Chuck Panozzo, James Young, Tommy Shaw, Todd Zuckerman, Lawrence Gowan, and Ricky Phillips. Tommy Shaw, the guitarist and main vocalist of the band, and Will Ivankovich, their producer, actually came up with a couple of the songs for this album a few years ago. They came up with Locomotive and Mission to Mars, and subsequently after this, they came up with the story, the concept of this first manned mission to Mars in 2033. That is basically the concept of this album. And the reason why it is set to the year 2033 is quite random actually. It's the year when Shaw is turning 80 years old. And later they also found out that NASA or some other space company is actually going to send out their first manned spacecraft to Mars in that same year. So that was quite a weird coincidence right there, but it just fit perfectly as well. The name of the spacecraft in this album is Key Dive, and there's a whole story behind that as well, but I don't want to go too deep into what is behind here because I could go on talking about this for hours. Another little feature that I love about this concept and this album is that all of the different band members actually play a role of one of the fictional characters in the story on the album. So for example, Tommy Shaw plays the pilot, Lawrence plays the captain, and James Young plays the engineer. And then you have the three other band members playing a science expert, a astrophysics expert, and a survivalist expert. So they're very involved in this whole expedition and this whole story, which is something that I love. It just shows the dedication and the seriousness that they put into this. So now that we have soaked in a little bit about the background story, let's get into the review. So I'm not going to talk about all of the songs here. I'm going to talk about the songs that stood out the most and that I think are the most noteworthy songs, because again, I could go on talking about this for an hour, but it would be really boring. So I'm just going to keep it short. The first song that I want to mention is Gone, Gone, Gone. It's the second track, and this is more of a classic rock song.
Rise up and seize the day. Blue sky, we're on our way, you know it. All systems set to go.
For some reason, when I first listened to this track, and this is what happened to me when I listened to the album, like many of the songs on this album, they simply didn't stand out to me, and it was a mix of the fact that it felt like a revival sound. It sounded like they wanted to revive this typical Deep Purple sound of the 1970s. It sounded like that, and the lyrics are also quite concrete. I mean, for example, the first verse or the first chorus goes like this: "Feel the pressure, break through the atmosphere, and we'll be gone, gone, gone. Light it up, let's get this show on the road." And yeah, it's quite concrete, it's very direct, and it doesn't feel like they put that much into the lyrics. It's quite predictable in a way, both the melody and the lyrics. But what makes it strong is that it's easy to relate to. So the more you listen to it, the more you grasp it, and the more you like it. At least that is what I felt. And also, it helps a lot that the lyrics are connected to a bigger story, and that is what makes it interesting. That is what's saving it, sort of. This is a song that is very vocal and guitar based, but the more you listen to it, the more you hear those small details. For example, the synth during the chorus, it's kind of fleeting on top of the vocals and the guitar track. And I just love it. It adds a bit of atmosphere to it. There's also some bass lines that are really funky once you get into them. So yeah, just pay attention to that when you listen to this. Track number 3 is called 100 Million Miles Away, and this is another classic rock track that has a bit of blues to it. I don't know if you guys can resonate with that, but I feel like there's a bit of blues in that guitar lick, at least. I love how the bass, the synth, and the drums all collaborate to create this very penetrating and solid fundament for a rhythm in the song. That is definitely something that it just creates a great skeleton for the song, and it just makes it a whole lot more, yeah, penetrating and pounding.
Can't help but be who you are. Feet on the ground, your head in the stars.
During the chorus and the after chorus, the backing vocals give this falsetto performance, and that is something that you'll find in a lot of the songs here, and it's quite reminiscent of what Styx used to do before. It's so nice to see that although there's only one founding member of the band left in the current lineup, there's still so much that is reminding us of what Styx actually was about, what their original sound actually sounded like. It's nice to see that they have that evident part, although there's so many years since the band actually started up. Again, the song has this very 70s classic rock sound, but the thing that really makes this song stand out despite of that is just the synth in the background. That is one little specific thing that really made me pay attention to the song, and it's just classic in the way that it just works, you know, it works despite of the fact that someone has done it before. It's the story behind the lyrics and just the talent of the different musicians that keeps it all together and actually makes it good despite of the fact that, oh, it's it's quite a revival theme going on. The lyrics in the song are quite ironic. It's telling this short story about this captain who's sitting on the control board, and all of a sudden, while he is like 100 million miles away from home, he starts to think about his girl. You can't help but be who you are. Your feet on the ground, your head in the stars. And I can't help but love who I love. You're still on my mind, in the heavens above. The next track that I want to mention is the 5th one. It's called Locomotive, and I actually think that this is one of the strongest tracks off of the whole record. The lingering, soaring synth, the mesmeric guitar chords, and the masterfully performed vocals are just fusing so effortlessly together. I think this song is a masterpiece of its own.
Castles by the sea you made from sand.
Although the track is really stripped down and kind of held back during the verse, it hits so hard. 2 minutes and 55 seconds into the song, you also have this gibbery doo-da singing in the background, which is very reminiscent of some of the other prog rock vocal deliveries of the 1970s. For example, this is something that you can find in a Yes song, for example. And I just love that. It's a big throwback, but it's a good throwback. The lyricism behind this track is very evocative, it's very emotive, and it just hits you in a very direct manner. I'm gonna read the first verse here. Locomotive, tell me where you are, now that you become the distant star. Did you lose your fate where you belonged? Did you hide from those who you did love? Have you read the messages I've tried to send? Will you ever come back home again? The next track that I want to mention is the 6th one. It's called Radio Silence. And this one, in addition to the previous one, Locomotive, actually, I personally think of these two tracks and the consecutive ones as the passage in the album that becomes a bit more emotive and sad and striving. And this definitely comes forth in this song during the verse, actually, when you listen to the clingy overtones of the acoustic guitars. It just perfectly reflects those feelings. The singer sings about how he's dreaming about being at home on Earth and how he's feeling this very deep sense of love. And then he suddenly wakes up to this reality right here where he is in space, in this little claustrophobic tin can of a spaceship, completely alone. When I heard this song for the first time, I felt like the chorus actually ruined the song a bit because the backing vocals there feel a bit triumphant almost. They feel a bit overly positive. But as I listened to the song more, I actually managed to feel the song through and actually feel it as more of a cohesive thing. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about this album in general and specific songs, to be honest.
I need a little mercy. Gonna take a little faith to see the mission. It all comes down to me.
The last song that I want to mention here specifically is the 12th track. It's called Key Dive. And this is quite an interesting piece of music. It stands completely out from all the other tracks on the album because it actually sounds like a classical piece of music, classical piano piece. It starts out with just a piano and some additional string instruments. There are some harmonious vocals coming in here and there, and you also hear this guitar solo suddenly in a bit of an abruptive way coming in. And I feel like this song could have been a lot better if it was actually just string instruments and piano, because that is what's really interesting about the song. This nimble, experimentative piano part and string part is what really captures you in the song. But suddenly this vocal track comes in and the guitar, and it just sounds so off the cuff. It sounds so abruptant in the mix, and it just hides away the beautiful part, which is the melody, the standalone melody from the piano. There's such a flow in the melody here. It's so dramatic yet so beautiful. It plays with dynamics and time signatures. It's just it's a masterpiece of a song, again, like Locomotive. So in my head, there are 4 sections to the album. The first section features mostly rock songs, hard rock, classical rock songs like Gone, 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 100 Million Miles from Home, Trouble at the Big Show. These are very big throwback songs in a way. The next passage of the album consists of more moody, ballady songs. For example, Locomotive, Radio Silence, and The Greater Good. Then the third part, later on, you have this transitional passage in the album. You have some interludes, for example, 10,000 Ways, great interlude, and it's followed by this very proggy song. And you don't really have that many proggy songs here. Red Storm is such an intricate song, such intricate time signatures going on here, and you just have the band showing off their musical gymnastics in such a broad way. Then you have All Systems Stable, which is another interlude, and it's kind of a transitional passage where the story has actually redeemed itself. The story is coming to an end. They have climbed this quote-unquote mountain. They've faced their hardships in the story, and now it's coming to an end. It's the transitional part of the album. Key Dive, The Outpost, and Mission to Mars are the 3 last tracks, and this is kind of like the finale of the album. That is the 4th and final passage. And I like how this album feels like a journey. It definitely feels like a journey from start to finish. Yeah. A lot of great and definitional tracks here, but there are some tracks that really didn't stand out that much. I wish that Styx could have made all of the songs more integrative. I wish that there were more of a flow throughout the whole album, because many of the songs actually feel quite abrupt. Some of the songs take you by surprise, and not always a positive surprise. It's a bit it's a big leap from one song to another often. The Greater Good, Outposts, and Mission to Mars, those are a few of the weaker tracks, and the reason why I feel like they are weaker is because they were simply predictable in a way. I feel like they, you need certain songs to make up a story, to make it interesting, but you also have some parts that feel like you need to have them there in order for the album and the story to progress, and they're simply there to keep the story going, sort of. It's I wouldn't say there are filler tracks, but they are not as inventive, they are not as cohesive and as well-fitting as the other ones. Now, there are loads of other things that I would love to talk about when it comes to this album. For example, the artwork is pretty good. There are some Easter eggs on the album art. I could also compare this album to some of their previous works, but that would eventually just take me forever to get through. I'm gonna give The Mission by Styx a very strong 7 out of 10. There is just so much talent in this album. There's such an inventiveness, such a great throwback to some of the 70s and 80s typical rock standards. So yeah, this is an amazing album. Go and check it out. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like to share, explore, and learn about rock music from Bandcamp, then I highly suggest you click the red subscribe button below. Also, make sure you hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button, because in that way you'll always get notified when I upload new videos to this beautiful place right here. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you later. Stay tuned. Bye.